The reason for Phase 1B is to connect this canal to the rest of 2,500 miles of inland waterway. It stops 4 miles short at the moment.
If we attach it and restore it all the way to Sawle, that will enable boats to come from the rest of the country to here.
Redeveloping the canal from Stonehouse to Sawle, for us as a town and as a community, it just brings an extra boost of energy into the town.
You just have to look at what's happened already with the pieces of canal that have been restored, and you can see what happens when the canal goes through.
The canal project is so exciting and so ambitious and well loved in this area, but it has a really important function as well of improving the route down the canal for jobs and businesses.
I think the benefits of the new link and the next phase of the canal development project are of enormous benefit to the larger business community, bringing new job creation and jobs for young people.
I think it's really important to be able to kind of get that experience and learn a new skill.
We get unemployed people, we get retired and semi-retired people, and they start off as strangers and they become friends.
It's been fascinating to learn the local history and to understand about the woolen mills and how the canal was used and how it was connected to the River Thames.
We've got communities wanting to be educated and learn about the canal.
The canal project has a very large element of participation and inclusion in it, and we've designed what we're calling a Pathways to Participation programme, and that involves supporting everybody in whatever way they need support to take part.
It's absolutely critical that the community are fully engaged with this process so that they recognise the opportunities on an environmental, economic and social level.
Whether you are recovering from an addiction or whether you're living with a mental health issue or any kind of health issue, the peace and serenity that comes from being by the canal is really important.
Craig had a lot of anxiety about going out. He did 2 events with us where he basically ran the barbecue for us.
It's helped me to get off the alcohol and have more confidence in myself and think of other things instead of the drink.
Biodiversity net gain is something the government's really big on at the moment. We're hoping around 30 or 40%, so a real uptake in biodiversity. And what that really means is we should get more species here, we should attract more wildlife.
Builder in Nature accreditation it's a set of standards. It's a way of saying that a development has really taken into account the natural environment.
By working with the engineer team, they've actually come up with a novel design solution where we're actually fitting an eel pass as standard in a submerged culvert, and they're really proud of the fact that they've come up with this design solution.
Quite a lot has been done at the design stage to make sure that the restored canal offers the best opportunity for the environment. We're trying to avoid hard engineering where we can.
Main complexities are the bridges. We've got 3 major bridges. We've got the rail bridge, we've got the A38 roundabout, we've got another public road bridge as well. That takes up something like 2/3 of the total cost of this project.
The creation of this link to connect the already developed Phase 1A with the Gloucester and Sharpness canals will create a fantastic destination that will now be accessible to boaters right across the English canal system. And it will be such an exciting prospect for people to come and enjoy this new section of canal, to go into the beautiful countryside around Stroud and to visit that sort of destination. I'm sure it will be a great draw for people.
I think there's a nice feeling with the canal that this is really owned by the people of Stroud. It's our canal, people are very proud of it.
If it's not going to be done, it's going to be something of our heritage what we lose. We just can't let it go, can we?
Welcome to the Cotswold Canals Connected project. That was a video that we prepared for the National Lottery Heritage Fund to help us win the bid for this major project. And we were awarded that contract by the National Lottery. We won the bid, which was great. And we now move from the planning stage into the delivery stage. And myself as the project director, Glenn Dooley as the engineering manager, and Anna Tarbert, as the Environment Manager, are going to give an overview of the project and what it means for you and the communities that you live in. So first of all, a little bit of housekeeping. Your microphones will be muted because we've got over 200 on this webinar, which is great. Your videos have been turned off. If you've got any questions, then there is a Q&A function in Zoom. Please ask those directly into that system, and we'll try and leave some time at the end of the webinar to answer some of those questions. And we'll leave a list of frequently asked questions on our website for those who want to see them. And this session will be recorded. So now we talk about the Cotswold Canals Connected project. So what is this project and what does it entail? Because there's been a huge amount of work going on restoring the Cotswold Canals, really for the last 50 years, led by the Cotswold Canals Trust. And since about 2008, we've been restoring phase 1A. So in this project, we've got a number of strategic partners, and they are mainly charities, very much being led by Cotswold Canals Trust, who are a co-partner on the project, partnering with Stroud District Council. But we've also got Gloucestershire Wildlife Trust, who are managing the environment piece, Stroud Water Navigation Archive Charity, who have got the best canal archive there is across the country. And also we've got the Canal and River Trust, who run over 2,000 miles of connected canals right across the UK. And also we've got the Stroud Valleys Canal Company, who are responsible for actually operating the canal. So this is a significant infrastructure project, and we wouldn't be able to get to this stage unless we had the funding for this project. And the primary funder for this is the National Lottery Heritage Fund. They're putting in just short of 10 million. We've also got a significant contribution from the National Highways. They paid for the A38 project, which was actually done before we started this project. So that was already completed by a generous donation from National Highways. But then also we've got our charities and partners who are giving significant donations to this project. So we've also, within this project, we've got a huge number of private donors, and it's run by volunteers right across the canal. And we wouldn't be able to do that project without the support from volunteers. I'll talk about volunteering, the opportunities that lie ahead for the next 3 years on this project. So what are our goals and objectives? What is it that we're trying to achieve? Because for this project, we will be scrutinized by the Heritage Fund to make sure their money is wisely spent. And we achieve transformation, real change, economic, social, environmental change that's going to leave a legacy for the future, and the one we're proud of for future generations. So there are 5 strategic goals we've got, 5 outcomes we're trying to achieve. And the first one is about creating places. And that fundamentally is about restoring the canal, linking Stroud to the national network at Sewell. But as we do that, renovating and enhancing our heritage. We've got a very, very rich and proud heritage, and we want to very much embrace that and include that as a key part of this project. The next outcome is around working with nature. And Anna Tarbert will talk a little bit more in detail about this, about what is it that we're going to do to conserve, protect and enhance the wildlife, the habitats. And this is also very much linked to the biodiversity net gain and also our targets around being carbon neutral in the future. So it's going to all work towards that. The next area is, and this is a really, really important area, the canal embraces a huge number of local parishes, communities and organizations along the canal corridor. And this enables us to connect these communities and these organizations and to really bring them together to celebrate what the canal can provide and offer, and to make sure that everyone is included. And it's really important to provide opportunity and choice for all. And I'll talk a little bit about that more later on when we go on to the community engagement part. The fourth area is about our heritage learning. So I mentioned the Stroud Water Navigation Archive charity. They've got a really, really rich charity, a really rich archive of the history of the canal. And we very much want to bring that to life, make that accessible and available to all, work in partnership with other organizations such as Museum in the Park and the National Archaeological Society, and very much make that accessible and available to all. And there will be educating and learning opportunities for all along the canal. And the fifth and final outcome is to have a prosperous and connected communities, to leave a legacy for the future, to connect communities by rail, by water, by bicycle, networks, whatever that is, and to leave a legacy for the future and to have prosperous and connected communities right along the canal corridor. So I just want to talk a little bit about where we are with this project. So phase 1A has been completed, and that is the stretch that goes in the east from Stroud Brewery all the way to the Ocean Rail Bridge. And I'm sure you would have all seen the work we've done at Ocean Rail Bridge to build a new bridge within 7 days, an amazing piece of engineering, which you'll see more about later. And that 1A has now been completed. It's been handed over to the Stroud Valleys Canal Company, but there's still more work they need to do to make that operational when we have canal boats once again flowing back through Stroud. So the phase 1B project runs from the Ocean Bridge through to Sawell Junction. And Glenn Dooley will talk a little bit more about that project and what's involved with phase 1B. But I also don't want to forget what's happening at Brimscombe Port. So you would have seen at Brimscombe Port that, that there is a planning application that we are about to award a contract for developers to go and restore the canal at Brimscombe Port. And once that development is complete, we will still need to connect the canal from Stroud Brewery to Brimscombe Port. And the next phase of this project will be to secure the funding to get that piece done. So that's an overview around the project. And what I'll now do is hand over to Glenn Dooley to talk about the engineering piece. But before I do that, we're going to see the time-lapse video, 90-second time-lapse video of the amazing feat that was run by Network Rail over the Christmas and New Year period to build a new bridge within 7 days.
Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you for attending the webinar. And hopefully you would have been impressed by that short video there, time-lapse video of the Ocean Rail Bridge. If only we could build the whole project that quickly. What that 7-day time-lapse did not perhaps portray is the 3 years of planning and preparation that was undertaken prior to that. And we still have a few weeks of work left on the site till we actually get water back into the ocean. That project is one of approximately 40 sub-projects that we've got along the whole of 1B. And as has already been mentioned, 1B is the bit that we require to connect up to the national canal network, and really to fully realise the investment that's already been made along section 1A. So the projects within 1B fall into 3 quite distinct sections. And working from west to east, we have section 1, which is the Sawle Junction to the A38 roundabout works. Section 2 is known within the project as the Missing Mile. This was where the actual original canal infrastructure was lost as part of the development works that were undertaken on the M5 in the late 60s and the adjacent local highway network. And then finally, we have section 3, which is from the Eastington end of the Missing Mile through to the Ocean Rail Bridge. The projects within the 1B fall primarily into either restoration. This is where the canal infrastructure exists in one form or another. Some elements are quite sound in their existence, and other bits we do have quite a bit of restoration work to do. The other element of the project are those projects that are new build. And as you can see here, we have the A38 roundabout on the left-hand side and the Ocean Rail Bridge there on the right. These projects are significant engineering projects that were undertaken by other providers. We have a vast amount of volunteer resource available to the project, but there are some elements of the project where we do have to call in those professional skills. One of the key things, as these slides show, are the ways that we can improve health and well-being and access for the communities along the canal corridor. This is very much a volunteer delivered element of the project, and we have a number of skilled teams that can go out and turn the existing slightly muddy, treacherous underfoot towpaths into something that is a suitable multi-user trail. These towpaths, because of their historic nature, are somewhat constrained in width. So where we can, we're looking to provide the best opportunity for the multi-use. Cyclists can use these towpaths as well as pedestrians. So whilst they are not perhaps to national standards, they do provide a much increased in benefit opportunity to get out and explore the canal network. The project offers, through the variation of either restoration or new build, some quite unique opportunities. It's not often somebody is building a new canal. This is probably one of the first for 100 years where we're looking at restoring the missing mile. So we have a unique approach in how we're delivering the major civil engineering elements. We're working very closely with Network Rail and Gloucestershire County Council Highways on those elements of the project where we need their input. But it does provide vast opportunities for the local communities to get involved through volunteering, and they have had their opportunities to provide input through a number of workshops that were held prior to the Heritage Lottery bid, where we listened to what communities would like to see from the delivery of the canal restoration, and we've incorporated those in where we can into the projects that we're now seeking to deliver. Okay, next slide, please. Working slightly backwards here, picking up from the Ocean Rail Bridge, this is now linked, provided or will provide navigation into phase 1A. The Ocean Rail Bridge was a significant constraint to navigation, and that will now allow us to start undertaking other elements of the project, including the dredging of the canal, preparation of the towpaths as we've seen. We have in section 3 5 heritage locks to restore. Again, a key volunteer delivered part of the project. We have a new lift bridge to put in at the Bondsmill Trading Estate. The bottom photograph there shows the existing lift bridge, which was unique in its delivery. It's a fairly recent bridge. It was installed in the mid-90s, so not that old, but it is already part of the heritage in the fact that it is the first composite plastic highway bridge that was installed in the country, and we have work to do on that to bring it back into service. The middle, sorry, we'll just go back, Amy, sorry. The middle photograph there is an excellent little bit of history on the project. This is the start of the missing mile. That is Westfield Bridge. There is in front of that, believe it or not, in that grass, John Robinson Lock, which is to be restored. But the bridge was saved from destruction as part of the M5 construction works. They proposed that this bridge was to be blown up, but a local resident's daughter stood on the bridge and prevented the engineers from destroying it, and saved a wonderful piece of our heritage. So very thankful for the actions taken all those years ago. Okay. The missing mile, so as said, the top sort of left-hand corner there by the A38 roundabout, you can see a little bit of the blue existing canal. We have now constructed the section through the A38 roundabout, and that brings us into the start of the missing mile in earnest. Here we have to construct a new canal channel, 2 new locks, a mooring basin, and also get underneath the M5. Thankfully, as part of the M5 works when it was constructed, the crossing for the River Frome was provided, and it's something we are now looking to utilise by sharing the river crossing and putting the canal channel in alongside it. We do have a slide later on that shows that in a little bit more detail. The work in the missing mile is a great opportunity to provide a new biodiversity aspect, and I've worked very closely with Anna, who will be speaking shortly, to maximise the green-blue corridor opportunities through the missing mile. Okay, next slide. Not very clear, I'm afraid, on the slide here, but the top right image is showing how we are going to construct a new concrete channel within that existing opening where the river is passing through. You can probably see that the headroom above river height to the underside of the bridge deck is not suitable for navigation. So our normal canal water level will be about a metre lower than the normal river levels, and that will provide the headroom for us to navigate underneath the M5. The sketch at the bottom right of the slide there shows the new Hydes Basin that is to be constructed close to the A38 roundabout, and this is providing moorings for approximately 44 vessels, and will be part of a key part of the project. All the engineering work that we're undertaking is being funded through the sources that Chris highlighted earlier. Obviously, the maintenance of the canal, once we've restored, is going to rely on income generated from the canal, and the revenue from the mooring basin here will significantly contribute to the future maintenance costs. And the final section, section 1, which is the A38 out to the Saul Junction. This again has a number of challenges. You can see in the bottom photograph there is the oil pipeline, which passes over the canal. We have a proposal with the pipeline operators that they are going to directionally drill a new pipeline on the existing line underneath the canal, and they are due to be on site late summer this year, about July time, maybe August this year. That will reopen navigation. One part of section 1, we actually have to utilise the River Froome for navigation, and the middle photograph there on the slide shows part of the 500-metre length of the River Froome that we will actually utilise before we dive back into the proposed canal line. And the top slide there shows another of the obstructions that we've got to overcome. There are a couple of agricultural crossings. So these are basically just concrete slabs across the canal, which we are going to look to replace with a new bridge structure. So a significant amount of engineering work to be undertaken. A lot of this has been discussed very closely with Anna and the impacts we're having on the environment and the ecology, and all of our works have been designed to mitigate the impact. So the amount of hard edging or hard engineering we're undertaking is an absolute minimum, and we're looking at all the opportunities that the engineering can help enhance the existing environment. And that is my last slide. So I'll, on that note, I will hand over to Anna. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Glenn. I think you thought you were going to steal my thunder then, but I think you got away with that. So I think we're good. So whenever you're ready with the slides, Amy. Okay, so probably hopefully met some of you that are along on the webinar today, but I'm Anna Tarbutt. I'm Environment Manager for the project. I work at Gloucestershire Wildlife Trust. and the Wildlife Trust have been involved in the project since the beginning of the development phase. So we've really steered all of the work that's taking place in the delivery phase, and worked really closely, as Glenn's mentioned, with the engineering teams and with the other teams to really try and design a project that will deliver for the environment as well as for people and heritage. And that involves lots of things. So if we can go on to the next slide, please, Amy. So this really just is outlining the work that we've carried out to date and is still ongoing. There have been a lot of protected species surveys, some of which we've had volunteers involved in, and that will be ongoing over the course of the project. So we've got a really good idea of where we've got species that we need to avoid if possible, or mitigate for impact against, and that will be continuing across the entire delivery phase, just so we've always got a really good idea of where different species are. Some of them are very mobile, so it is something that will be ongoing across the project delivery phase. We've been working to embed environmental principles within the design. So again, as Glenn's mentioned, it's about minimising those hard edges and seeing where there's opportunities to deliver a much softer approach that delivers for the environment. We've carried out a full habitat condition assessment, so that's really getting a good baseline understanding of what we've got on site already. And all the normal stuff that anybody who's been involved in a development project knows about in terms of program and budgeting and designs and project risk. So that's all been going on to date. And if you could just move on to the next slide. So yeah, I just wanted to just spend a couple of minutes just kind of explaining what we mean when we talk about embedding environmental principles in design. And I think bioengineering and nature-based solutions are words that are coming up a bit more recently, and they're not always the most obvious what they mean. So what I've tried to do here is I've got an image just taken from Instraud of what probably most people think is a normal canal, what canals often look like. And you can see it's very hard edged, lots of concrete, and I guess that's what most people think a typical canal should be like. But where we are now, because as Glenn mentioned, we're in an unusual situation in the fact that we're getting to cut a new section of canal for the first time, I think Glenn said, for over a century then, but you don't often get to build new sections of canal, you restore them, but actually the fact that we are digging a new section of canal means we've been able to give some really careful thought to the shape of it and what profile that should take. So rather than it having sort of your traditional steep sides, we're actually going for a much wider canal with a more trapezoid shape, which means that we can, on some of those edges, have a nice reedy fringe, which really allows the canal to act as a corridor for wildlife, so things can move up and down it nice and easily. It doesn't have that hard edging, so plants will grow easily into it, animals can burrow into it, and it allows all of those things to happen together and to coexist. And what we can actually do is by choosing by putting some thought into what vegetation we choose on the banks, we can actually help prevent erosion and issues with the wash from canal boats. All of that can actually be dealt with through natural vegetation rather than hard engineering. And that obviously saves the project money, which is always a winner for everybody involved. But actually, as I said, it means that you get these much more aesthetically pleasing canals that act as a corridor for wildlife and for people. So it's just really, trying to produce the right solution in the right places to maximise what we can actually deliver with this project. And then just going on to the next slide, she says. Oh, yeah, there we go. So alongside working with the engineers on all of their projects, we'll actually be creating around 20 hectares of new priority habitat within the project itself. So we are buying those sections of land shown in green on the plan there. And what we'll be doing with those is we'll be recreating habitats that would naturally exist in the Severn Vale. So it is, for anybody, I'm assuming most of you are probably quite local, but it's a very low lying area of land. It's flanked by the River Frome, which is very flashy, so it rises and falls really quickly. So we've got wide floodplains in this area. And this project has really been designed to maximise and expand on the existing river corridor. So we'll be putting a new watery corridor through this bit of the landscape, and actually there's a great opportunity there to really link those in together so that species that move along one can move along another. So as I said, quite a lot of thought has been gone into which species we're going to be putting in and which habitats. So we've got grazing marsh and some scrapes that will be going in on the floodplain section, which should make this area much more attractive for wintering wildfowl and waders. We're restoring a traditional orchard, and we've already got an active work party there on a monthly basis who are doing some of the restorations to that. We've got a species-rich grassland going in and a washland, which will be a much more connected area of the land with the river than it is at the current time. So lots of things going on, and this will all be used to calculate our biodiversity net gain. Again, something that probably everybody's heard about in the press recently. Biodiversity net gain is now, well, will soon become mandatory under the Environment Bill. It's likely to become mandatory for all development from sometime in 2023. We're actually committed to providing biodiversity net gain anyway, even though we don't need to or have to for this project. So we will be looking at delivering a substantial biodiversity net gain, and we'll be carrying out a thorough calculation of that this coming summer, which will be fun for me. So on to the next slide, if we can, please. So the programme of works, what are we going to be doing over the next couple of years? So we've got a series of offline ponds which we're going to be creating, and we'll be using that to move some of our rather extensive population of water voles that we have along the canal and river corridor. As I said, we're doing some restoration of species-rich grassland, lots of works to improve the riparian habitat, so that's your river habitat. And again, that's things like fencing and preventing some of the poaching by cattle, which is when they go down and damage the banks. And again, lots of these things are linked to our water voles, which, as I said, are extensive. We've got a county significant water vole population in this section of the Frome and Canal, and we're very much committed as a project to ensuring that by the time we finish, that population is actually stronger and much more connected and much more resilient than it is already. So that will be something to be proud of, although it does make a few programming headaches, as I'm sure Glenn will agree. So yeah, lots of other work going on. Something I'm really proud of this year is the work that the volunteers have been doing in creating a full database of all of the trees along the entire route of the canal. And that's really going to allow us to start thinking about our trees as assets and actively managing them to make sure that they're there now and into the future. So that's some really good work that's going on already this year. And then looking forward to next year, we'll be doing some of our sort of slightly more complicated work, and that will be creation of a washland. We'll be, once the locks are in place, we'll be doing some elver monitoring. We are doing the new locks will have eel passage as standard, which is an obligation we've got to fit from the Environment Agency point of view, but it's a wonderful opportunity to get people involved with volunteering, understanding more about rivers and canals and their importance for freshwater species. We will be translocating for water voles, and we're also looking to do some pillbox work. We're lucky to have bats using some of our pillboxes, so we'll be doing some works to actually make those even more accessible and more optimal for bats. It's not actually on this slide, possibly because it's going across the entire project, but overall we're also looking to plant around 4 kilometres of hedgerow, and again that's all about our connectivity and making sure that we're creating those leafy networks across the landscape. And then I think I've just got one final slide, she says, hopefully. Yeah, so it's just again touching on the connectivity aspect of the project, which is really why Gloucestershire Wildlife Trust have been involved into this project from the beginning, and it's about understanding how the canal can actually really link up from the Severn Estuary and the Severn Vale all the way up through Stroud and provide that connectivity for wildlife and for people. So we've got lots of things planned. We're doing wildflower planting along some of the towpaths. We're doing work to improve the river corridor and make new areas of riparian habitat. Glenn's mentioned the towpaths and, getting people access to green spaces, which I think, given the pandemic we've all been in for the past 2 years, everyone appreciates just how important that access to green space is. We'll be doing various bits of work for built habitats, so putting in kingfisher banks, some bird boxes, some bat boxes, the hedgerow work that I just mentioned. So 4 kilometres of new hedgerow will be planted as a result of this project. And we are also applying for Building with Nature accreditation, and that's a measure of green infrastructure. So we're working closely with the Building with Nature team to put in for our accreditation. And if we get it, we will be the first infrastructure project in the UK to achieve Building with Nature accreditation. And that's really means that we've designed a scheme that delivers for people, for wildlife, and that considers water. So it's water, well-being and wildlife are the 3 W's we have to hit to get our Building with Nature accreditation. So lots and lots of things going on across the project. I'm going to hand over to Chris again now, who's going to talk to you about some of the community engagement aspects.
Glenn and Anna, thank you very much for taking us through the journey of where we've got to and what we've got to deliver over the next 3 years. It's a huge project and a significant amount of work has gone in over the last 3 years. And now we move from the planning phase to the delivery phase. So it's a really exciting piece, but we now need to scale our team and deliver the project. Clearly for the missing mile, we've still got to get the planning application through, and that was submitted on the 17th of December, and we're addressing all the questions that have raised from that. But we've had some very, very positive feedback on that, and we're optimistic that will all go smoothly through. But there's a big piece of work to do on the planning application, getting that through. So you could probably get a sense of the scale of the project and the volunteering opportunities there are for both engineering and canal restoration and also biodiversity in along the phase 1B section. But as I mentioned earlier, community engagement is going to cover not just 1B, but it's going to go all the way from Sewell Junction to Brimscombe Pool. So it's going to be a much wider scope than where we're focusing on for the engineering and the biodiversity projects. And this approach is about connecting communities and organisations along the canal corridor. And I mentioned the strategic partners involved, but actually we want everybody to be engaged and involved along the project, so that actually this is a canal that's been restored, built and maintained, for the community, by the community and with the community, because it's a community that's going to benefit from the canal and the legacy for the future. And so it's really important that we have that engagement with everybody along the canal corridor, and we'll open that up, provide option and choice for all. So our themes are about connections. They're about providing choice and opportunity for all, and also about making sure that the canal is open and accessible for all. And that's not just about the canal towpath itself, but it's also how you access the canal. It's around parking, it's about everything else that goes on along the canal. And there are sections of the canal which currently aren't accessible, such as at the new site down at Liddell, and we're addressing all of those areas. So those are our themes for this year. And the focus very much for this year, which I'll touch on, is around the volunteering opportunities, around events, and lastly around health and well-being, which I know both Anna and Glenn have already touched on in their respective areas. So if we move on to the partners that we're going to work with. So as I mentioned, it's not just the strategic partners. We want to work with everybody along the canal corridor, and that's local councils, it's organisations, community hubs, it's the education, the schools in our area. It's around enterprise and tourism, about how we open up the canal corridor and what that means for our ecotourism. There's a very rich culture of media and arts within Stroud, and how do we really embrace that and bring that to life and enhance that along the canal corridor? And so these are just some of the partners that we're either working with today or hope to be working with, but really this project is open and available to everyone. Anybody that wants to be engaged can be engaged. And it's really important that this project is done with you and by you and for you, and it's not just one that's delivered and provided on a plate, because that way we won't get engagement, we won't get longevity, and we won't leave sustainability and a legacy for the future. So engagement with all communities, it's really important within this project, truly inclusive and truly diverse. So if we look at the volunteering, it's not just about the canal restoration and the wildlife and habitats. There are all sorts of other opportunities along the canal. And I mentioned the Stroud Water Navigation Archives, and there are opportunities there, storing their archives and making them accessible to all. The boat mobility require boat handlers. The Cotswold Canals Trust require people to work in their bookshop and offices. And we've got lots of other organisations, such as the Stroud Water Textile Trust, that also need volunteers to support them and to keep their charities running and operational for the communities. And there is going to be an open day on Saturday, the 26th of March. That obviously coincides with the Stroud Farmers Market, so it should be very full and busy that day. And it also coincides with the Inland Waterways Association having their annual conference at the subscription rooms. So anybody that is interested in volunteering, that wants to understand more about the options there are, then please come along to that open day on Saturday, the 26th of March. So on the event side, there is going to be a really rich program of events this year. Some of those events will be organised by the Cotswold Canals Connected team, but we actually need to recruit that team first before we can start to scale up those events. But a lot of the events will actually be run by and for and with our partners and with the communities. And that's really important, because that way that the local community really gets involved in the planning and the organising of the event. And that's why by getting them engaged, they can then take pride for those events and encourage all of their local communities to get involved and to partake. And we'll be publishing the events programme across our website, across social media and display boards. And also each of the organisations that we're working with will also be publishing their events. And many of you would have seen the plan for the Cotswold Canals Trust in their 50th anniversary year. And they've got some very exciting events, such as the charity walk, the Canamel, and also the raft race. So the canal is for everybody to enjoy, and whatever anybody wants to get out of the canal, it is the most amazing, peaceful, tranquil place. And it's provided huge benefits to all sorts of individuals from different backgrounds with that want something different out of the canal, whether it's purely for fitness, whether it's to re-engage with nature, whether it's for, to overcome some personal challenges. It's there and open to all. And all of our organisations we're working with, they will be providing health and well-being events for people to get involved in, and to make that open and available to all along the canal. So, as I mentioned, we are recruiting our team at the moment. These are going to be the full-time roles that we're recruiting for. There will be a couple more roles we're recruiting for towards the end of the year. These have been advertised for the last week via the Stroud District Council website, via Indeed and via LinkedIn. And so if you know of anybody who may be interested in these roles, then please encourage them to submit their application. We want to have a really broad spectrum of people to apply for these roles, and we want to build our team so we can then deliver this project. So that's our overview around the Cotswold Canals project. And before I open up for our Q&A, I just want to talk about how this aligns with the Stroud District Council Canal strategy, because this project is a finite project. We've got 3 years to deliver this project. We've got a budget to deliver it. We need to provide a legacy for the future, and to make sure that everything that we do is sustainable and it's going to provide transformational change, both economic, social, and environmental. What happens in the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years along the canal? And Stroud District Council have recognised how important the canal is to our communities, to our people, to our heritage, and everything we covered in those strategic outcomes. And so they've embarked on putting together a canal strategy. That's actually being launched today and will be going out for consultation. And it provides a framework about how we're going to build and shape the canal for the future. So it's a natural progression of this project and provides a lasting legacy, and to make sure the canal is fully transformed and we get the canal that we want for the communities for the future. So that concludes our presentation, and I'll open it up now to the panel for Q&As. We are almost exactly on time. We're 14 minutes to go, and let's see if we had any questions, and we'll open up back to the panel to answer your questions.
Thanks, Chris. I'm just going to ask some of the questions that had the most sort of interest. Glenn, I'm just going to give you a question, if that's okay. It's a question about the time frame for Walkbridge and in a little bit more detail around how we're going to deliver that project, please.
Yeah, I think I've just typed a response to that question. That's okay. Yes, Walkbridge is one of our significant obstacles. It's right at the Bysole junction. So until we resolve that, nothing is going to get into phase 1B. The current discussions with GCC, we're looking to appoint a design and build contractor this year, with the intention of being on site with construction starting in spring 2023.
Thank you, Glenn. Anna, you've been busy typing away. So we at Cotswold Canal Trust and other partner organisations, we get a lot of inquiries about swans, and the interesting discussion, things you said about how you've designed the canal banks. Could you please just in brief give an idea of how those banks are better for swans and nesting birds, please?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I get a lot of questions about swans, which is fine. Everyone loves a swan. Most of the time. So I think it's an interesting one. I know we're quite lucky in phase 1B with the existing sections of canal. I think because of the way it was cut, it is soft edged anyway. We're in nice thick clay, so they haven't had to hard edge it. So generally swans only really get into difficulty, this is a generalization, if they get inadvertently trapped in locks, or there's a sort of a really large gap between the water levels and the side, and they then can't get out, or they struggle, or they panic, and there isn't potentially the stretch of water for them to take off. The good things, I suppose, about the areas we're looking at is they are these nice rural areas, so we don't need to hard edge them. So there should always be much more of a softer transition between the water and the banks than there would on your sort of hard bank profile, which should stop that happening. And we don't really have lots of areas where there is going to be a big gap between one and the other, which means we shouldn't really get into those problems with swans getting trapped. There are going to be new sections of lock, and as I said, locks can be an issue for swans if they swim in and then can't get out, especially if water levels have dropped. But we've got some really good banksmen in different areas who will just have to keep an eye on it, really, and we can, get in and open the locks if we need to get swans out. So those areas where we do have to have hard edging, we'll just need to work to make sure we don't get any animals stuck in those sections. But as I said, yeah, generally the reedy edges will allow for swans and other wading birds and other waterfowl to nest in there should they wish to. I think people who live in Stroud and who've seen some of the places that the swans there nest know that they can get used to human beings quite quickly, and they don't necessarily have a big issue with being disturbed. So I think everyone should be able to coexist nice and easily.
Thanks, Anna. And the thing that you said in the middle there, which was around the banks people, so our partner organisation and the Navigation Authority for the Stroud Water Canal is the Stroud Valleys Canal Company, and they have an enormous amount of wonderful volunteers who act as lengths people and lock keepers, and so they're on call for all of these sorts of issues if the public have any. So it's worth sort of thanking the volunteers for that. Chris, I have a couple of questions for you. One is easy answered, which is the expected time of navigation for out from the Stroudwater navigation to the River Severn. And the second one is, do we have any apprenticeship opportunities? Now, our webinar today wouldn't have been possible without that. So I don't know if you want to take that question, those two questions, Chris.
Yeah, so actually the first question is the hardest question. I would pass that to Glenn because it's going to be dependent on the engineering program, but we're really looking at targeting to have this project completed and open by the end of 2025. And we will be monitoring progress and evaluating the risks and the obstacles and the challenges. But if we do get the resources and the volunteer effort we need, and it's primarily going to be a volunteer effort, then we can do it. So it's going to be a team effort to get this piece delivered. The next question around apprentices, yes, there will be opportunities for apprentices. And actually, as part of the team we're building, that's going to be an objective for them, is to find opportunities for apprentices in all aspects of the project, not just the engineering, the biodiversity. And in fact, we have an apprentice with us at this very moment who's actually done all the slides and also is doing all our social media, Eleanor. And so this is what an apprentice can deliver. So it's proof is in the pudding. So thank you, Eleanor.
Thanks, Chris. Glenn, we've got a question from one of our volunteers, Will Foster, around given the critically important M5 crossing, when it's due to start, please.
Okay, well, the M5 crossing, as Will says, it is a critical piece of the project. It is tied up with the planning application for the whole of the Missing Mile works. We're hoping that we will have approval on that planning application around May time this year, which will then determine the final contents of what we need to put into the tenders and specification for going out to contract for delivery of those elements. So we're not expecting to be constructing the M5 crossing until at least summer 2023, because one of the other constraints we've got there, and I deliberately tried to avoid mentioning water voles, but one of the locations of significant water vole presence is at the M5 crossing, and the translocation work that we have to do can't be undertaken until spring next year. So the M5 itself will not be starting until at least the summer 2023.
Thanks, Glenn. Anna, I've got, this is an Anna or a Glenn question, so apologies for being unclear. We have a question about the shallow banking profile. Will mooring be more restricted than normal due to there being less water depth towards the bank?
Shall I come in on that one?
Sure. I'll fight you for it.
Okay. I mentioned the Hydes Basin as being a mooring location. The project is looking at providing other mooring facilities along the whole length of 1B. We're working at the moment to come up with a eco-friendly design where we can obtain the vertical edging that is required by boaters, whilst minimising again the amount of hard engineering that we have to do to deliver that. And there are some variations on existing designs currently being considered that we think will provide a bit more opportunity to be eco-friendly. So I did notice, and I did respond to a couple of questions, that moorings were of interest to some of our attendees. So as I say, there are other mooring opportunities within 1B, and also there will be more in 1A as well. It's not just going to be limited to Hyde's Basin or anything like that.
I think it's potentially useful just to recap, because it's probably not always clear from trying to get everything about this project over in an hour, but the new sections we're talking about, that's a mile or 1.6 kilometres worth of new canal, and that also involves the Hyde's Basin and various other constraints like the M5. So that new shape is just in that one section, and it won't be really edged on both sides because we've had to fit around our other existing constraints. So I think it's about getting that balance really. So trying to let the corridor let the canal be that wildlife corridor, and still allowing areas for people to boat and for people to enjoy or to fish. I think there are various other comments about all the different things people want to be able to do against the canal. So it's just trying to balance it as much as we can. So it's not we're not saying the entire 6.4 kilometres is going to be this wide, really edged, and that nobody will be able to stop anywhere at all. It's just, in a way, it's just such an opportunity because we are able to have a wider canal than we would normally. So we'd be silly not to really, and to try and get both into one. So I think we will hopefully strike the right balance, but I'm sure people will tell us if we don't.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Glenn. That was a very comprehensive answer. Our friend Jan Thomas from Cotswold Boat Mobility, quite rightly, very excited about getting underneath the Ocean Railway Bridge in her wheelie boats and her cata canoes. I'm sure Jan would love to see more people join her accessibility and disability boat. So the question is, will the new it would be good if the new Bonds Mill Bridge was high enough for canoes to go underneath. Glenn, is this going to be the case?
Okay. Yes, we're looking at the design for the replacement of the Bonds Mill Bridge deck. All of these elements will be taken into account, and certainly I'll pass this request on to the design engineers. So yeah, we can look to see if we can incorporate that request.
Thank you very much, Glenn. Right, yeah. Just last question now, because we've got just a couple of minutes left. And it's an interesting question from David Jowett. And he's asking, because the last slide on your deck, Chris, was around the Stroud District Council's canal strategy and the Brimscombe Port development piece of work. And the question is the funding for the restoration of the canal between Brimscombe Port and Stroud Brewery being sought now, or is it being done later? So just so people are aware, we're still fundraising for Cotswold Canals Connected Phase 1B. COVID and Brexit and supply chain issues have hit quite hard, and we're still fundraising for those actively. Our members and volunteers are very generous, and the community has been fantastic, but obviously Brimscombe Port is a different issue. So Chris, could you take that, please?
Yeah, clearly we've got to deliver Phase 1B and get the canal operational, and also a canal that we can maintain as well. So it's really important that we do that. But as we're doing that, we will look at what the plans are for opening up and restoring the canal at Brimscombe. And then we will make a judgment call as to when we need to go out and submit a bid for that. It won't be this year, but it's something that's the back of our minds, because it will happen at some stage. And what's really important is for this project, if we do deliver on this project, as I've gone through, and we do deliver against those 5 strategic outcomes, and we satisfy not the National Lottery Heritage Fund, and provide this as a showcase project, then actually that would really increase our chances for getting funding from other organisations for the Brimscombe Port. But Brimscombe will not distract us from what we have to deliver on phase 1B. We will deliver that piece, and we will find the right timing to go and do that part of the project.
So, Chris, is this a good time for me to just say thank you very much for all of the questions? There's more questions than we're going to be able to get to today. We will create a frequently asked questions page from it following the webinar, and we will make this webinar available online for anybody that wants to recap.
And thank you all for those who joined the webinar. I hope you found this informative, interesting, and hopefully it's inspired you to be engaged. This is very much, your project. It's for the community, by the community, with the community. Get engaged, get involved, take pride in what we deliver, and we'll make this really successful. So thank you very much, and we will keep you informed. There will be more webinars further on down the line, but this is the first to formally launch the project, and let's now crack on and move into delivery mode. So thank you all, and thank you to our presenters, Anna and Glenn as well, and also to the team behind the scenes set up the webinar. Thank you very much indeed, and good night, and wish you all a good evening.